The import DXF-DWG command, primarily used to bring DWG files drawn in AutoCAD or other third-party CAD software into Vectorworks. Due to the complexity of this particular 101, we've split this into 3 separate videos. One for primary settings, one for graphical attributes, and one for objects. First, there are a number of different menu commands that will actually import a DWG. The primary one, and the one that we'll be covering in detail today, is the import Single DWG command. This option will first allow you to select your file, then immediately take you to the DXF DWG import options dialog, which is where we will spend the majority of this video. The import DXF DWG or DWF option will let you select multiple files, but does not directly prompt you to open the DXF DWG import settings dialog. You can, however, open it manually by setting Use Settings to Active Settings, and then clicking Set Custom Options. Also note, you should always import DWGs into a new blank file, not a file you've already begun to draw in. Oftentimes, importing directly into an existing file can cause issues with the scale of that document. Back in the Import Options dialog, the first thing you'll see at the top is a drop-down that reads Settings. This allows you to save a custom configured set of settings to be reused later. This isn't strictly necessary, but if you work repeatedly with a CAD user that you import DWGs from, it would be wise to save a set of settings that work with their files. They will usually work from similar templates each time, so that you don't need to reset the settings every time you use it. Once you've set the settings you want, you can click Save and then name the saved set. Manage lets you edit or remove previously saved sets. Primary Settings. The Primary Settings tab lets you adjust units, scaling, and object handling. The first area, Model Space Units, is where you set the units that the imported DWG document should be. Vectorworks will be able to read the units used in the DWG file automatically. It will display this value next to the Unit Settings in File. Normally, you should manually set the units that are going to be used in your import. If you're importing an architectural model, usually the units are inches if the project is imperial, centimeters or meters if it's in metric. Site projects tend to be in inches or meters in imperial and metric units respectively. However, for the best results, it's highly recommended that you communicate with the creator of the DWG in order to find out the exact units used. These 2 fields display the exact conversion that will be taking place. In this example, the document is in centimeters, so since this document is currently set to use feet and inches in the document settings, I see the conversions to a single inch. If I change to a unit that's much larger, yards for instance, it will show feet, the larger unit set in my current document. Other settings will also show their conversions, so 1 kilometer will come in as just over 3,280 feet. You'll notice that if we check the box for Set Vectorworks Units to Match, there will always be a 1-to-1 conversion. This is because when this box is checked, the document units of this file will be altered to match the units of the imported DWG. This is another reason we recommend importing into a new blank document instead of risking altering a current Vectorworks file inadvertently. If you set the Unit Settings drop-down to Custom, any value you like can be entered, but this is not commonly used. Setting it to Use Vectorworks Units will force the DWG to be imported as if its units are identical to the units in the current document, which is often not the case. Paperspace Units lets you set the paper space, or the geometry that will be translated into sheet layers in your Vectorworks file, to either inches or millimeters. By layout means Vectorworks will interpret each one separately. If the user the DWG came from used multiple paperspace units in various sheets, use by layout. Otherwise, set it as you like. Model Space lets you control the scale your current document will be after the DWG imports. Fit to Page will cause Vectorworks to estimate a scale that allows all objects in model space to fit onto a single sheet of paper. This scale lets you select a scale manually. If you know what scale the DWG you're importing is, then you should set that here. Clicking Scale allows you to pick from the usual scaling list. Make sure to note that applying the appropriate scale during DWG import is not accomplished by changing the scale of the design layer before importing. The appropriate scaling is done via the Model Space Units area. Center after import will manually alter the origin of the document to center it within the objects it finds. The only reason you wouldn't want to do this is if the file contains coordinate info that it needs to maintain, or if it's georeferenced in any way. Use World Origin instead of User Origin positions the imported objects according to the world origin. If unchecked, it will position the imported objects in relation to the user origin. Again, if you have georeferenced information that you're working with, this is important. If not, normally you can leave them both unchecked. Convert Objects To lets you select how objects will be imported. 2D and 3D is normally the best option, as it will bring in all possible objects. All 2D will import all possible objects as flat planar geometry. All 3D will import all possible objects as 3D geometry. 2D 3D Conversion Res lets you set the quality of the imported objects. Normally, this can be left at Use Vectorworks Preference setting, which will automatically set it to match the conversion res settings under Display and 3D in Vectorworks Preferences. However, if you've already imported and the results were lower quality than you were expecting, you can manually set to anywhere from low to very high. The higher settings can create a more complex file with more vertices, directly resulting in a much larger file size, which can impact performance directly. Make sure to keep an eye out for the additional 2 101s.